So, good evening, everybody, and welcome you all to this BRAC webinar. For further proceedings, hand it over to the moderators. Over to you.
Thank you, Shamsa. Warm greetings and good evening to one and all. On behalf of PRAC team and Sancheti Hospital, I welcome you all for the post-Diwali 10th webinar series. Festival of Diwali fills everyone's heart with aura of purity and compassionate mood. Diwali gives us strength and zeal to carry on with our work with goodwill for rest of the year and leading to success and prosperity. I hope you all must have got enlightened with gleams of diyas and echoes of chants during Diwali. And now, PRAC has brought again the excellent opportunity to enlighten us with academic light. Our today's topic is axillary brachial plexus block. Axillary approach to brachial plexus is popular because of its ease, reliability, and safety, and is ideally suited for OPD patients and easily adapted to pediatric patients as well. We are today very much blessed and fortunate to have with us highly acclaimed speakers and panelists. I am sure we shall have great enlightening session today. Our first speaker is Dr. Surjit Giri from Sibsagar, Assam. He will be guiding us on landmark and neurostimulation guided axillary brachial plexus block. Dr. Giri is consultant anesthesiologist as well as critical care and palliative care physician in Pragati Hospital, Sibsagar, Assam. He has received many awards and honors for his excellent noble work. I invite Dr. Surjit Giri and request him to take over the session. Over to you, Giri sir.
A very good evening. At the very outset, I am extremely thankful to PRAC webinar for giving us the opportunity to submit our views regarding axillary approach to the brachial plexus by peripheral nerve stimulator machine. Ladies and gentlemen, this patient was CKD having pneumonitis and he was posted for arteriovenous fistula. Author has administered ultrasound guided supraclavicular block and ultimately patient ended up with tracheal intubation for respiratory distress. Then author concluded that more distal approach like infraclavicular or axillary brachial plexus block should have been considered in this patient as the procedure was in and around elbow joint. This is another patient, morbidly obese patient who is posted for forearm debridement and again ultrasound guided supraclavicular block was administered by the author and patient ended up with tracheal intubation because of the phrenic paresis. Then author concluded that the more distal approach like brachial plexus block or axillary brachial plexus block may have been ideal in this group of the patient as the procedure was in and around the elbow and the forearm area. Now, because of these complications, because of this side effect, and we have to accept this, the irrespective of the gadgets you have, irrespective of your setup, the above clavicle block always having some side effect and complication. We have to accept it, and the problem increases further when we do not have a good setup, when we do not have any manpowers or other branches to help you or other anesthesiologists to help you if there is this type of complication happens. So we have to think about the remote and the rural anesthesiologists practicing in India. I have visited many places of northeastern Assam. We went to the Tawang, which is around 3000 feet above the sea level, as well as the Sadia, which is around far east of Assam, which is near the China border and Arunachal border. And we have also visited right now that is sitting in the river island, that is Majuli, where there is only one anesthesiologist giving service to all of the surgeons. But he has no helping hand, ladies and gentlemen. he has no ICU backup, ladies and gentlemen. The higher setup is somewhere around 100 kilometers away from many rural and remote anesthesiologists. So ultimately, we have discussed with them, we talked to them, and we asked the question why you are not practicing the brachial plexus block for hand surgeries. They said these are the inherent complications. I do not have any infrastructure, etc. And my the higher setup is around 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers, and it is very difficult to manage the side effect and complication for the above clavicle block, and that is why they are not practicing. And also as the axillary block having the lot of failures and the rate, so they are not practicing at all the brachial plexus block. So that is the scenario, ladies and gentlemen. Probably every remote or the rural anesthesiologist is facing the same problem, and that is why the brachial plexus block many a time is not popular for amongst many of our anesthesiologists, especially the axillary brachial plexus. And the brachial plexus block means many feel that it is the supraclavicular block. So that is the what is the idea that people are holding, and that is I am submitting in front of you. Yes, we can use the axillary brachial plexus block for forearm surgery, elbow surgery. So this is the position of the patient, supine. This is the flexor hand, you can see, and it is abducted. We have palpated the axillary artery, and when we went just above the axillary artery, so that we can get the finger flexion twitches. So ladies and gentlemen, this boy is 15-year-old and he has 85 kgs. Now if someone practice general anesthesia in a remote or rural area, and there may be a possibility of difficult intubations and other airway issues, as he has an also history of sleep apnea syndromes and obstructive sleep disturbances is there, as per from history from his mother. So effective and reliable brachial plexus block will decreases all of the side effect, all of the complications, and all of the problems with the tracheal intimation. This will eliminate completely. So this is our target, and we are targeting finger flexion. After getting the finger flexion, that is medial stimulation, you see all myotome, all osteotome, all dermatome are blocked with just single axillary block. So we are avoiding the above clavicle block, we are avoiding the airway manipulation, we are avoiding the side effect and complications of above clavicle block. So we have to learn this technique, and we should not underestimate the axillary block. And this is how we are practicing in each and every patient whenever they comes for the mid-humerus surgeries, forearm surgeries, elbow surgeries, starting from kids to the adult. Now you can increase the success rate by giving nerve specific injection. Here see, this is the axillary artery. We are going superior to the axillary artery, that is for the musculocutaneous nerve. So once you insert the needle, you will get the flexion of the elbow, and that is none other than musculocutaneous nerve stimulation. So after getting the twitches at 0.3, we are depositing 7 ml of local anesthetics. Now in the same injection point, you see, same injection point, we went above axillary artery, parallel to the axillary artery, and we went just deep inside, and we are getting the finger flexions, that is the median nerve stimulation. So again we are depositing 10 ml of local anesthetic there, and the same injection point, see, same injection point, we are inserting the needle, and our needle insertion direction will be slightly posterior and the deep, so that we can get the finger extension or the thumb extension, and then depositing 15 ml of local anesthetics. Now, separate ulnar nerve block is most of the time is not required, as when you are depositing 15 ml of local anesthetic for radial nerve, it will simultaneously blocks the ulnar nerves. So that way you can increase the success rate for axillary approach. Now, you can use the catheter also, ladies and gentlemen, and this is an olecranon fracture coming for the TBW surgery. Surgeon told that it may take some time, and she had a lot of issues. She has an COPD, she is hypothyroidism, she is diabetic, she has been CKD, she has an fatty liver issues, and blah blah blah. So it is all problems she had, and uncontrolled diabetes also, and also hypertensive. So we thought of putting her on axillary catheters, and once we got the finger flexion, we have inserted the catheter, and now I'm getting the twitches, and then depositing 25 ml of local anesthetics, and these are all osteotome, all myotome, everything was blocked properly. So ladies and gentlemen, and this is our gift to the patient. We are not touching the pleura, we are not going to the above clavicle, still we are giving absolute analgesia and anesthesia in the perioperative period. Thus we are not deranging her metabolic component, we are not deranging the kidney profile, etc. So with a single axillary block, ladies and gentlemen. Now there are a lot of blames on axillary block. It is a success rate of only 70 to 80%, and this axillary approach is indicated only for the elbow and the forearm surgery. It spares the musculocutaneous nerve, and it spares the all cutaneous nerves, as we know, for the arms and the forearm surgeries. Yes, I do agree what the blames are there, but whether we have any approach so that after giving one injection we could block the cutaneous nerve, we can block the radial nerve, medial nerve, ulnar nerve with a single approach. Yes, there may be the solution, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to Sekhar sir, in 2015 he introduced the term supraaxillary block in 2015. Now what he has observed, they are giving the supraclavicular block with an ultrasound guided approach, and even then the cutaneous nerve, the posterior cutaneous nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, and intercostobrachial nerve are not blocked properly. So what they used to give, they used to infiltrate that area before giving the incision. But they went high in the axilla, in the axillary fossa, and they have seen that all these cutaneous nerves are clubbed together there, and if we inject the local anesthetic there, that will block all the cutaneous nerves along with the supraclavicular block. So their approach was supraclavicular block followed by supraaxillary nerve to block the cutaneous nerve effectively. Then we thought, why not we try with a peripheral nerve stimulator machine in that area? And I talked to Sandeep Diwan sir, I talked to Dr. Ritesh Roy, I talked to Janil McLean also, and as they are not practicing peripheral nerve stimulator machine guided block, I started giving this PNS guided block in this area, that is in the supraaxillary area, in the axillary fossa, high in the axilla. So that is our needle insertion point, ladies and gentlemen. You can see this is the axillary artery which is palpable, and from here the axillary artery is not palpable at all in this patient. So you can palpate the axillary artery and you go high in the axilla, in the axillary fossa, till the axillary artery is palpable. So this is the point. So I see the needle is exactly parallel to the axillary artery. So I am inserting the needle here, and moment I have inserted the needle in this position, you can see I got the musculocutaneous twitches, that is the flexion of the elbow. It does indicate, means musculocutaneous nerve is very much nearby, and then I directed the needle in the posterior direction and the inferior direction so that I could get the finger flexions, and I have deposited local anesthetics around 30 ml in this patient. This is another patient. You can observe the needle position. This was the axillary artery. From here the axillary artery is not palpable, and that is why we taken this point and went just above the axillary artery and inserted the needle, and so that we can get the finger flexion. So that is our needle insertion point, ladies and gentlemen. So from last few years, we are practicing only the supraaxillary process, and we have retrospectively reviewed our patients in our Pragati hospital, and we took the surgeries in and around humerus, not the forearm surgery. We have not picked up the forearm surgeries. We have picked only the surgeries on the elbows and the humerus, and all the results were reviewed. Written consent from the patient was taken, and the position was in all patient was supine position, hand was abducted, axillary artery is the only landmark, and needle insertion that we have described just before. So this was your demography. The lowest age group was 13 years to max 65 years. Weight was 20 to 85 kgs, and block time you can see from 3 plus minus 10. Onset of block from 35 plus minus 10. 3 patients, it required sedation with dexmedetomidine infusion plus fentanyl during the bone manipulations, and the conversion to the GA was 0. We took 2 bowel. In one bowel we put 0.5% of levobuprofen according to the weight, as well as 2% lignocanidiolin in another bowel with a maximum of 7 mg per kg. And here we have increased the volume from 0.5 to 0.8, 0.9, and sometimes 1 ml per kg also, because this is a volume blood, ladies and gentlemen. You have to increase the volume. So this was the distribution of the surgeries in 100 patient. 58 patient was soft humerus surgery, middle shaft fracture, and for the elbow surgery various procedure, and this was around supracandular procedure for in 28 numbers of the patient. And we found that out of 100, in 69 number of the patient we got the twitches in first prick, and needle manipulation was required in 31 patient. Vessel puncture was there in 13 number of the patient, but it was very much compressible. It is a superficial, no issues at all, and complication was totally 0, ladies and gentlemen. So our end motor response, that is 59% was median response at 0.3, and 41% is median response. 41% radial response, and 59% was median response, and we have injected in both these responses. And block was assessed at 30 minutes with 3 P's and with temperature saturation. So that is we are going to demonstrate in this patient. And this is a fracture humerus, soft humerus, or when you can say lower soft humerus. And this is the hand, and this hand position, this will be held by one of our assistant. And this is the hand, this is abducted hand, and this is the axillary artery. I could palpate up to here, and that is the insertion point. The moment I have inserted the needle, I got the muscular quickness, see, and I have manipulated the needle so that I can get the median twitches. I'm getting the median twitches now. Now first the muscular quickness, second was the median twitches, more manipulated, and went to the posterior directions. I got radial twitches, means I go every nerves are confined there. Is it, see? I am manipulating the needle, I went slightly posterior, and I got the radial twitches. So the current was decreased, and here I am at 0.2 milliamps. I am getting the twitches. So I slightly withdrawn the needle, and so that I could get the twitches at 0.3. After that, I have deposited 30 ml of local anesthetic there, and then block was assessed with temperature sensation and 3 P's. So this is he is saying, oh, I'm not getting the cold. This is the cold lipidem which is brought from the freeze, and asked him whether he is getting the cold sensation or not. He says, I'm not getting cold sensation, and dermatom is blocked. This is also lateral cutaneous nerve, it is also blocked. The posterior cutaneous nerve of the arm, posterior cutaneous nerve of the forearm, this is also blocked. and we went further and we checked the intercostobrachial nerve. That is also, you can see he is nodding, he is not getting temperature sensation. Medial cutanous, he is also not getting temperature sensation, but the cephalic part of the medial cutanous nerve, he is getting some sensation is there. So dermatome is blocked, isn't it? And then what about the osteotomy and the myotomy? So I asked the patient to push. See, I'm asking the patient to push. He cannot do, means radial is gone. So I have asked the patient to pull the hand, but he cannot do, means the musculocutaneous is also blocked. Then I pinch about the ulnar area, then I pinch about the median area. So he is not getting anything, means 4 P's are gone. 4 P is gone means your radial nerve is gone, your musculocutaneous nerve is gone, median nerve is gone, ulnar nerve is gone, cutaneous nerve is gone. No nerve is left, ladies and gentlemen. And now we can proceed for the surgeries. You see, with a single injection at the supraaxillary level, we are blocking the cutaneous nerve, all nerves, and he is enjoying the surgeries. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the beauty of supraaxillary technique. So this is the cutaneous nerve. Many a time it is not blocked. That is in a lateral brachial nerve, the medial anterobacterial nerve, and this is the intercostobrachial nerve. This is the posterior antebrachial nerve. These are all many a time are not blocked with our supraaxillary as well as our supraclavicular block. Many a time we have to infiltrate that area. So this is the main, you see, fracture of humerus, and again we went for the supraaxillary approach for posted for the open relaxation and internal fixation. We got the radial twitches, you can see, and deposited around 35 ml of local anesthetic there. And then when assessed, I found that the incision area, that patient is getting the cold sensation. So I asked the surgeon to infiltrate that area, and he is infiltrating that area. You can see patient is screaming in the pain. That means the lateral cutanus is not blocked. And what he did, the surgeon, and when he took the scalpel, he has infiltrated in this area, but he is going to incise in this area. See, almost around 4 to 5 centimeter lateral to the infiltration area. So once he has incised, the patient is screaming of pain. You can see the face. Then I said, oh, stop. So you have not injected properly. So you please inject in your incision area, and then you can see the miracle of our this axillary technique, ladies and gentlemen. So now he is comfortable, no pain, and our dermatome is blocked, osteotomy is also blocked properly, and myotomy is also blocked. So with a single injection at supraaxillary block, we are blocking everything, ladies and gentlemen. It is a mid-humerus surgery is going on. So ladies and gentlemen, the axillary approach, especially the supraaxillary approach, has a great role in our clinical practice, especially in the rural and the remote areas. So in out of 58 patient for the soft fracture, 12% was needed LA infiltration by the surgeon, and during muscle and the bone manipulation, one patient each complained some pain, and again that was infiltrated by the surgeon with a 1% of lignocaine adrenaline. That was sufficient. And 28 numbers of the supracannular fracture having skin infiltration 7%, and others doesn't require anything, ladies and gentlemen. So after giving this supraaxillary block, we check the 3 P's, and at 40 minutes, if suppose patient one component is not blocked properly, suppose radial component is not blocked properly or median component is not blocked properly, then we supplement with a supraclavicular block, because we always preserve 10 ml of local anesthetic either for the skin infiltration or for the supraclavicular supplementation. After giving the block, we again assess the block within 3 P's. If it is blocked properly, we proceed for the surgery, and even if the patient is getting pain, we go for the GR, and none of the cases require general anesthetic conversion, ladies and gentlemen. So this is you can see we have our success rate with supraaxillary rate, supraaxillary approaches. It is greater than 90% for soft humerus, and for the supracandicular it is around 96%, and for the elbow it is around 93 to 94%. So if suppose patient is having this discomfort, or a patient is having partial block, then we make the block complete by supplementing with 10 ml of local anesthetics in the supraclavicular area. So this is our result in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. So my submission is that we have to rethink, and we have to re-explore this supraaxillary area, because in our patient we have already showed that with a single injection we are blocking the cutaneous nerve effectively, we are blocking the all the muscle nerves which is supplying the arm and the forearm. And why not we have to rethink and re-explore this area, especially for our anesthesiologists practicing in the rural and the remote area, where they do not have any access to the manpower, they do not have an access to the ICU, they do not have an access to the different branches of the medicines. So I want to draw the attention of all anesthesiologists, the research anesthesiologists who are doing a lot of researches in regional anesthesia, so that they can explore this area in the benefit of our fellow colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giri sir, for your excellent and amazing presentation. Your videos and all cases discussion were really outstanding. You made all ideas of neurostimulation guided axillary block very clear, and you kept no stone unturned, sir. Thanks a lot. Our second speaker is Dr. Madhuri Dadke. She will be guiding us on USG guided axillary brachial plexus block. She is practicing anesthesia since last 23 years. She is consultant anesthesiologist in Sancheti Hospital, Pune. Her main areas of interest are regional anesthesia, especially upper limb blocks. And her other passions are gardening, cooking, and sightseeing. Over to you, Dr. Madhuri, madam. I invite you for the session.
Madam, thank you for the kind introduction. Just give me a second. Madam, can you see it? Hello? Hello?
Yes, madam.
Yes,
Can
we
you
can
also-
see.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with this presentation. Dr. Giri has already shown how aptly he is using the axillary block in remote settings, especially when one is the alone anesthetist. So I want to discuss the ultrasound guided axillary brachial plexus block. So the history of this block: in 1981, Abramowitz and Cohen described the first use of Doppler ultrasound to identify the axillary artery, thereby aiding the performance of axillary block for upper limb surgery. But it was the use of 2D mode ultrasound in 1989 for axillary block performance that heralded the era of the ultrasound guided peripheral nerve blocks. So indications: this block is used for procedures on the elbow, forearm, and hand. This Nisora picture shows dermatomes, myotomes, and osteotomes that are covered by this block. The aims are to block the terminal branches of the brachial plexus, which are the median, ulnar, radial, and the musculocutaneous nerves. Absolute contraindications: patient refusal, inability to abduct the arm, drug allergy, infection at the site of injection. Relative contraindications: pre-existing neurodeficits in the distribution of the block, traumatic nerve injury, an uncooperative patient, previous surgery in the axilla, especially lymph node dissection or vascular injury, and bleeding disorders or anticoagulation. Advantages of ultrasound are: ultrasound technology permits needle, nerve, and injected visualization, which facilitates a dynamic block needle endpoint and accurate perineural local anesthetic placement. This speeds up the execution of the block, reduces volume of local anesthetic drug needed, improves the success rate, and reduces complications. Equipment needed is ultrasound machine with linear transducer, sterile sleeve and gel, standard nerve block tray, syringes with local anesthetic, 5 centimeter 22 gauge short bevel insulated stimulating needle, peripheral nerve stimulator, and injection pressure monitoring system. So local anesthetic that can be used are ropivacaine 0.75%, bupivacaine 0.5%. Lignocaine 2% can be used for shorter procedures that don't need long post-op analgesia, such as the AV fistula surgery. And the minimum volume of local anesthetic has been reduced by the ultrasound guidance compared to the traditional technique. 15 to 22 ml, 15 to 20 ml, that is 3 to 5 ml per nerve, is adequate. Effective axillary plexus blocks have been described even with lower volumes, less than 2 ml per nerve. We can use clonidine as the additive up to 1 mic per kg. So how do we scan? The transducer is placed as proximal in the axilla as possible. Obtain the conjoint tendon view. The transducer is oriented perpendicular to the axis of the brachial plexus and the axillary artery to image the neurovascular bundle in the cross section. The conjoint tendon of the latissimus dorsi in the teres major lies posterior to the neurovascular bundle. The conjoint tendon appears as a sloping hyperechoic line on the ultrasound. We then bounce the transducer to identify the axillary veins so as to alternately expand and compress the veins and avoid them. The needling technique can be out of plane or in plane. However, visualizing and tracking the needle tip is more difficult in the out of plane technique. I prefer to do the in plane approach as we can see the entire needle shaft with its tip, and this offers a greater safety and efficacy. Patient, how do we position the patient? After informed consent and standard monitoring, we must give the patient the optimal position. The patient is placed supine with arm abducted 90 degrees at the shoulder. If the arm is in a cast, it needs to be propped or supported by another person. We must take care not to over abduct the arm to prevent patient discomfort and to prevent traction on the brachial plexus, making it more vulnerable to needle injury. Clinical pulse, multiple facial planes are present such that each nerve is contained in its own facial envelope. To avoid vascular puncture, use beveled needle and approach at a tangent. So this paper in Clinical Anesthesiology 2007 discusses the axillary sheath and single injection axillary block. In these two studies were carried out. In the first study, the internal arrangement of the axillary sheath and its septae were examined microscopically by slicing the sheath longitudinally and transversely. And in the second study, boluses of 10, 20, and 40 ml of methylene blue were injected into one of the compartments of the axillary sheath. The axillary sheath was dissected out and sliced to see the spread of the dye in the injected and adjacent compartments. So the study shows that the septae from the deep surface of the axillary sheath, they form compartments for each nerve and they act as barriers. By increasing the injected volume of solutions, bubble-like defects are produced in the septae in the compartments into which leakage was demonstrated. A single injection point can suffice for the axillary brachial plexus. This picture shows the needle insertions. Axillary block can be accomplished by 2 to 4 separate injections depending on the disposition of the nerves around the axillary artery. So the single injection point at the skin can suffice. The needle can be withdrawn and redirected towards the individual nerves. So before I show you the individual nerve blocks, at Sancheti Hospital, all ultrasound guided blocks are given along with the PNS stimulator, and we do not inject the drug at stimulations below 0.4 milliamps. So this shows the musculocutaneous nerve block. This nerve lies lateral to the axillary artery in the plane between the biceps and coracobrachialis. The needle is advanced to contact the nerve at a tangent to its surface and pierce the facial plane. 3 ml of local anesthetic drug is enough to encircle this nerve. The median nerve block. The nerve is advanced towards the median nerve. Here the nerve is in 11 o'clock as in relation to the axillary artery. Penetration of the fascia is signaled by a tactile pop. 0.5 to 1 ml boluses are injected to surround the median nerve. So the injection of drug at this point also serves to hydrodissect a safe passage towards the ulnar nerve. Total 5 ml is enough to block the median nerve. The needle is then advanced further to be adjacent to the ulnar nerve. Again, 0.5 to 1 ml boluses up to total 5 ml are injected to surround the ulnar nerve. The key to targeting the radial nerve is to direct the spread of local anesthetic between the conjoint tendon and the radial nerve. The needle is advanced carefully to avoid the musculocutaneous nerve in its trajectory till the needle reaches the junction of the axillary artery and the conjoint tendon. So here we can see the needle has reached below the artery and boluses of 0.5 to 1 ml of local anesthetic are injected up to 5 ml to block the radial nerve. So this paper shows the usefulness of high resolution ultrasound for small nerve blocks. The skin of the inner area of the arm is innervated by the medial brachial cutaneous nerve and the intercostobrachial nerve. And the intercostobrachial nerve is located above the conjoint tendon. They described in this paper a close relation between the medial brachial cutaneous nerve and the axillary vein beneath the brachial fascia. So 5 ml of local anesthetic was injected in the area above the latissimus dorsi, proximal to the intersection with the brachial fascia, where the union of the tendinous and muscular portion of the latissimus dorsi is seen at a distance between it is around 2 to 3 centimeters in women from the axillary artery and 3 to 4 centimeters in men. So this video shows the injection of local anesthetic drug below the brachial sheath. This blocks the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm. And on the picture right above, it shows the needle tip position just above the brachial fascia, which will block the intercostobrachial nerve. So this paper discusses the minimum volume of local anesthetic drug required to surround each of the branches of the axillary brachial plexus nerves during the ultrasound guided technique. So in this shows that radial nerve needs a mean minimum volume of 3.3 ml, the median nerve 2.65, ulnar nerve 2.48, and the musculocutaneous 2.2 ml. With the help of ultrasound, they showed that the individual branches of axillary brachial plexus can be reliably located and surrounded by very low volumes of local anesthetic drug. And this should be enough to provide anesthesia sufficient in most cases for surgery. So to demonstrate these low volumes, we took serial pictures of a block given by Diwan sir to demonstrate the spread of local anesthetic drug. So in this, there are pictures of musculocutaneous nerve after injecting 1 ml, 2 ml, and 4 ml of local anesthetic drug. And even with 1 ml, we can see that that there is a good spread of the drug. Here, there is a picture of the median nerve with the same volumes of a drug, 1 ml, 2 ml, and 4 ml. Though in these pictures, we cannot see a very good spread around the median nerve, but we must remember that this is a two-dimensional picture. The picture of the ulnar nerve with 1 ml itself, the nerve seems to have floated here. And with 4 ml, the ulnar nerve seems to be completely surrounded by the local anesthetic. The picture of the radial nerve, with 1 ml, a good spread can be seen above the radial nerve. With 2 ml, local anesthetic drug we can see above and below the radial nerve. With 4 ml of local anesthetic, the radial nerve is floating in the local anesthetic. So this is a paper which showed a topographic pattern of the brachial plexus at the axillary fossa through real-time ultrasonography in Koreans. They studied 131 patients scheduled for below elbow surgery, and their results were the most frequent position observed were 79% in patients. The median nerve was 10 to 11 section. In 79.3 patients, the ulnar nerve was in 1 to 2 section. In 78.4%, radial nerve was in 3 to 5 section, and 86.9%, the musculocutaneous was in 8 to 9 section. Also, 9.2% had double arteries, and 87% of patients had multiple axillary veins. So we just need to know that multiple veins and their different positions may affect the nerve block As veins move the nerves to different positions, deep axillary arteries affect the anatomical positions of the nerves, and abnormal blood vessels make it difficult to adjust the needle close to a nerve, causing tissue damage and patient discomfort. So to demonstrate this, we found two axillary arteries in a patient. The superficial and deep axillary artery can be seen in this picture. We can see the musculocutaneous median and the ulnar nerves around the superficial axillary artery. The radial nerve is not seen here. So when we gave the block, these needle positions show the position of the nerves. The median nerve in the first picture, the median nerve is between the superficial and the deep axillary arteries. In the second picture, the ulnar nerve is at 3 o'clock position to the superficial axillary artery. And in the third picture, the radial nerve is behind at 6 o'clock position to the deep axillary artery. Complications of the axillary block: infection, bleeding or hematoma formation, nerve injuries, inadvertent intravascular injection, and local anesthetic systemic toxicity. So in this picture, in this video, we can see the injection of local anesthetic close to the median nerve. This also spreads to the ulnar nerve. In this case, both nerves have got blocked in a single injection, and the ulnar nerve may not get stimulated by the PNS, and we should not attempt to stimulate the ulnar nerve in this case. So I want to show this video. We can see in the first picture, the video actually, that there is a very poor sonographic quality. So when just half ml of local anesthetic drug was injected, though there was no resistance to injection, we observed that the radial nerve seemed to have increased in size. In the second picture, we can see the radial nerve, the cross section, the diameter of the radial nerve has increased. So the moral of the story is that we should not inject drug until we get a good sonographic picture. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Madhuri, for extraordinary presentation and lively videos. You made no stone unturned about USG guided axillary brachial plexus block. You made everything very clear. Thank you very much, Madhuri.
Thank you, madam.
Now we move ahead our session for panel discussion. For this, we are blessed and fortunate to have with us our senior panelist, Dr. Sandeep Diwan, who is our academic chief and research guide, and who requires no introduction. And our second panelist is Dr. Bharti Ade, who is our head of department. And our other consultants are Dr. Ganesh Bong, who is anesthesiologist in Sancheti Hospital, Pune. His main areas of interest are pediatric anesthesia and regional anesthesia. And Dr. Abhishek Lonikar, who is consultant anesthesiologist in Sancheti Hospital, and his areas of interest are also critical care and pediatric anesthesia. Now I invite all panelists and request to take over the session. Over to you, Dr. Ganesh, Dr. Lonikar, and Dr. Diwan sir, and Dr. Bharti madam. I invite you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. And I would like to thank our both speakers, Dr. Madhuri and Dr. Surjit, for their excellent presentations. Everything is well covered. Just I want to add one point in, about UVG guided axillary block. As mentioned by Dr. Madhuri, with ultrasound, we can target each nerves so that we can go down with the volume at around 2 to 3 ml per nerve also. But alternatively, we can go for single perivascular injection also. Of course, for musculocutaneous, will require a separate injection. So with 2 injections, one perivascular and one for musculocutaneous, we can go for successful axillary block. So, but the volume requirement will be more. So Gonzalez and colleagues did a study for ultrasound guided axillary block to find minimum effective anesthetic volume required with double injection technique. And they found that minimum anesthetic requirement for to block musculocutaneous nerve was around 5.5 ml. And for perivascular injection, it was 23.5 ml. That means almost 30 ml of drug is required to get successful axillary block under ultrasound. This corresponds to the study quoted by Dr. Madhuri, that is by Sadan I, who did who demonstrated that there are sheaths in the axillary septas in the axillary sheath, which form the compartments around the nerve. So if we give single injection, the higher volume is required so that the drug spreads across the septa to have successful block. And that's all. And Dr. Surjit, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm
yes,
here,
yes.
sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Just I want to ask one question.
Yeah.
While giving PNS guided axillary block with multiple injection technique,
Yeah,
suppose
sir.
during first stimulation you got median nerve response, and you
Okay.
gave some 5 ml of drug.
Okay.
And then if radial nerve is blocked with that injection also,
Yeah.
then you need to increase the current, right?
Yes, sir. Slightly.
And do you think you will compromise the safety of intraneural injection with that? So what is your take?
No,
Because-
sir. No, sir. We have not seen, because many times, suppose we have injected 5 ml of local anesthetic, and then immediately it will not block, and
Okay.
we perform the radial nerve or other nerves immediately. So there is no safety issues as per my view, because it will take some time to local anesthetic to completely block the nerve.
Okay. One
So
more
we have
question.
not found anybody. Yes, sir.
Okay. One more question. While giving the block, the needle direction was parallel to the artery. But
Exactly,
conventionally we give block, our needle direction is perpendicular to the skin. So any advantage or?
Sir, this what I have described is the supraaxillary block, that is in the axillary fossa, high in the above, in the axilla. So if you go to the anatomy, so the course of the axillary artery as well as the plexus relation in relation to the axillary artery, you will find that it is almost parallel to the axillary artery. And many a time we are getting the stimulation with this direction, and sometimes it requires some manipulations of the needle.
Okay. That's all.
Yes,
Over
sir.
to you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Divan.
Yeah, so Dr. Surjit.
Yes, sir.
Very nice presentation. As usual.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Madhuri, nice presentation. You
Thank you,
too.
sir.
Yeah, so Abhishek, you have got any questions? Abhishek Lodekar?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Dr. Surjit Giri, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Very much enlightening lecture it was. I have got
Thank
one
you, sir.
question, sir. While giving a supraaxillary blockade, as conventionally in the axillary blockade, even in the HAD6, it has been stated that due to the anatomic variations, radial arteries, most of the times, in 80% cases, it is posterior to the axillary artery.
Exactly, sir.
But in 20% cases, so there may be a variation. So there are high chances that if you are going for axillary blockade in anatomic guided block, it may get spared. So
exactly.
What was your experience or with supraaxillary approach?
Yes, sir.
Was it consistent?
Yes, sir. We have found consistently, because you see, in one patient I have shown you, when I inserted the needle, I got the musculoskeletal twitches, and when I manipulate the needle just inferiorly, I got the median twitches, and slightly posteriorly, I got the radial. Which in the radial nerve, the musculoskeletal and the median nerve, they're almost in the nearby areas in the supraaxillary area. So that may be the reason that we are getting consistently with that single injections.
Okay. Yes, sir. That was the only point, because I have myself experienced a lot while giving axillary. There is a radial sparing.
Exactly, sir. Exactly. Because in our technique is totally different. We are going in the supraaxillary area, means in the axillary fossa, as far as the axillary artery is palpable. So in that area, the nerves are almost compact. All nerves are compact, and that is why that is the most probable result that we are getting the high success rate. And at the same time, we are increasing the volume, sir. That is from not from 0.5 ml per kg. We are increasing from 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and even 1 ml per kg. That may be the reason.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Shailesh, Ganesh, Sandeep, do you have any questions?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah,
I
you
have
want to-
I have one question for Dr. Surajit Giri.
Yes, please.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation. Rather, for shaft humerus surgeries, you are giving supraaxillary. It was really a discovery for me. So it was really pleasant to see that block. I have just one question regarding your presentation, regarding your study. So in the
Mhm.
graph you showed that the supraclavicular supplementation was required more for elbow surgeries compared to shaft humerus, which was a bit of surprise for me.
No, no, no.
Because
It is because the cases were less for the elbow surgery.
okay,
That is the reason. That is why I am getting the more percentage, because you see 58 numbers of the cases was for the soft humerus surgery, and few numbers for the elbow surgery, and that is why the percentage increase. That is the reason.
okay,
And if
okay,
I get the more cases, then percentage will be definitely less.
okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Madhuri?
Yes, madam, I can hear you.
Yeah. Do you think with axillary block there will be tourniquet pain for long surgeries of the hand, or do you have to always infiltrate for the cutaneous nerves?
Actually, the intercostobrachial and medial cutaneous nerve of arm, they supply only the skin on the upper medial side of the arm. And that doesn't really cause tourniquet pain. The tourniquet pain is due to muscular pain, ischemic pain. So the muscles are supplied by the musculocutaneous nerve, which we are already blocking. Only if we don't give a musculocutaneous nerve block, we can get tourniquet pain. So if we have given a good musculocutaneous block, it may not be necessary to give the intercostobrachial block. But for the sensation of the skin, the sensory sensation, that for that we can give the block.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I think we have a small child who's speaking all the time. Somebody can mute that, whoever it is close to that. Surjit, I got one question to you.
Yes, sir.
The shaft humerus, most of the patients you seem to have abducted. Do you give a small dose ketamine to do that, or was it okay with them?
So, sir, for children, sir.
No, for the adult shaft humerus.
Soft humerus. I didn't got the question, sir.
No, for the shaft humerus axillary block, did you abduct the shoulder?
Not so much, sir.
Because that might cause pain to the patient.
No, sir, not so much of abduction. We talk to the patient and we say that I'm going to abduct the hand slightly, and if he complains pain, then we stop the abduction. That is the thing, sir.
Okay.
It was a reasonable abduction. It was not hyperextended.
Right. Now, the Madhuri, whatever she has mentioned in her study that was quoted from one of the articles that mentioned the anatomical study where you increase the volume of drug.
Yes,
then only it's possible for you to the drug to get dispersed in all compartments, and they all have separate sheath.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Surjit, what he has done is he has just, during the catheter technique, he has placed it at only one compartment.
Yeah.
Exactly, sir.
Yeah. So how do you correlate these two methods? When you say that multi-compartment and Surjit injects only in one single compartment.
Really, I also wondered the same thing, because the sheets are definitely there and we do see them when we give the block. But if you notice in the last clip, I showed that when we give the drug to the median nerve, it spreads to the ulnar nerve also. So I don't know, do you give high volumes, Dr. Giri, then to so that
yes, madam. Yeah. In all patients, we go high in the axilla, and probably the seat concept or the septa concept is very less, I think, sir, because I do not know the reason, because I have not studied with ultrasound, number one. Number two, we have increased the local anesthetic volume, that is from 0.9 to even the 1 ml per kg. That may be the reason.
Okay, so 1 ml per kg, that would be 50 ml for a 50 kg person, sir?
It depends upon the weight of the patient, and suppose we have already told that we take the S-bupivacaine, that is maximum is 2 milligram per kg, and lignocaine adrenaline, that is 7 milligram per kg.
Okay,
And then suppose weight is around 50 kgs, we distribute accordingly.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, no diluted. I will get the same concentration in that ml per kg.
Okay, sir.
Surjit, I think it's a nice concept because we had discussed this earlier when we had met.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
And then we discussed about how we can give it with PNS guided. You, me, Ritesh, and I think there was one more person with us. So anyways, the reason why I ask you again is 50 ml local anesthetic is too high volume. I think we used to give that high volume.
No, sir. No, sir. I have talked. I told in the presentation max to max 40 ml.
Max is 40 ml. He has mentioned
maximum for 40 ml, not 50 ml, sir.
Yeah, so even 40 ml, Surjit, I think you can go down on the volumes in the supraaxillary fossa because the way you mentioned that it's a compact structure, just like in the supraclavicular area.
Yeah, sir.
In that case, the anesthetic has to be less anyhow.
Okay, sir. So 30 ml will be most of the time maybe a subset.
I think you can study with different volumes in milligram per kg body weight.
Yeah, sir, definitely.
Can I come in?
Yeah, please, Ganesh.
This question was asked to me when I presented infraclavicular also. Actually, whenever I am giving 40 ml, even with median nerve contraction, the failure rates are very less, almost nil. But whenever I am trying to give 30 ml and give median and radial nerve blocks at the elbow, the onset is prolonged.
Okay.
Because onset is prolonged.
So it is your for that is a classical technique or supraaxillary?
No. I give by infraclavicular PNS guided only.
Okay.
Whenever I restrict myself to 30 ml, the onset is much prolonged. I do have to give some sedation for the initial incision, but then later on patient doesn't remember anything. But whenever I increase the volume to 40 ml, the onset is very fast. That's what I observed with PNS guided blocks for infraclavicular. But I don't have much experience about it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Ganesh, that we have spoken about infraclavicular and the volumes that you have injected at that particular with those particular responses. So this we are discussing in particular about the supraaxillary area, which might be even also closer to the infraclavicular.
Exactly, sir.
Yes.
And you mentioned, Surjit, about the research which is being done in this area. So I have done some dissections and contrast studies in that particular area and cross section. So in case if nobody has got questions, I can share my screen.
Exactly, sir. We will be love to hear.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
So Himanshu, you have got any questions? Ganesh, Nitin, Avinash?
No, sir.
No, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
So I'll just share my screen here. This is just about the. So Surjit, as you have mentioned, we started this block very long time ago, and this was the first axillary block that I gave was somewhere in 1994. So after that, I just wanted to mention about this thing. Is it multi-compartmental? That has been clarified. Does it affect the intercompartmental spread? Now, what has been mentioned in the literature is that if you give at the site of median or ulnar nerve, as Madhuri has mentioned that she has seen the spread from one compartment to the other compartment, it does occur here. But in the radial nerve, if you inject in the radial nerve alone, it does not spread to the other compartment. So that is what they have found. And the other thing what they mention is a single injection effective. So probably it is effective because of its proximal spread. Now Ganesh asked Surjit about the direction of the needle. Now the direction of the needle, what he mentioned, Surjit mentioned, is cephalad in the supraaxillary. So this helps in propulsion of the drug. It gives a thrust to the drug for its cephalad spread. And that is how it acts at the level of infraclavicular area, because that is how we have seen the spread of the contrast. And the second one is the intra and the intra-compartmental diffusion, which we are going to see. Now, this is way back in 1984 where they dissected a cadaver after they injected the latex. The blue one is all the latex, and the yellow ones are the nerves coming out, the axillary, radial, the musculocutaneous, median, the medial antebrachial cutaneous, and this is the radial nerve. So what has happened is that with the catheter insertion, as what Surjit had done, they had given latex, and they found that the latex had involved all these nerves, except probably the ulnar nerve, which was not included here, but most of the nerves were involved. Now, this is again a very good article. I think Surjit, you should read this, and Madhuri, you should also read this article. This is a functional anatomy of brachial plexus in 1983. There are two similar articles, 4 years apart in the same journal. Now, what they did was they wanted to see circumferential spread, does it increase block efficacy? So they just gave periarterial, and they saw the contrast going all around. You can see that the contrast is going all around the axillary artery. And you will not believe that in this patient, when they used a total of 48 ml of solution, it was inadequate block in both these patients. So it does mean that the periarterial injections, it really doesn't help in giving you adequate blocks, because as Surjit said, we have to block all the 4 nerves, and we have to see even more nerves which are being blocked clinically by all his techniques, the push and pinch technique. Now, this is in 1987 by Patridge. Now, this was by Thompson with the same heading almost. This is Patridge, and they did almost 36 dissections in 18 cadavers. And they mentioned that connection exists between various compartments. You can see this. The dark one is the latex in different specimens here, and it is surrounding all the nerves except in one specimen at this point. And they mentioned that multiple injections are unwarranted. It's not necessary, so you can give it single. If I remember myself, I used to give just the median nerve injection, local anesthetic, and just forget about it. GK around 40 to 50 ml of local anesthetic, but that was many years back. With ultrasound, we have almost reduced to half, even lesser than that. This is another important study. I think, Surit, you should read this, because this is for non-ultrasound guided axillary block. The need for 3 injections has been questioned. So what they did was they had a single injection, they had a double injection, and then a triple injection. The single injection was with the catheter, the double injection was with the catheter and transarterial technique, which is not done nowadays. You can forget about it. And the triple deposit was using these 2 techniques. And what they found was that with the triple deposit, the local anesthetic, it went all around the nerve. And the block efficacy was at the highest with the triple deposit. So the median nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, the ulnar radial, all these nerves were involved in this particular study. This is a very good article, and you should read this. And you need to pick up articles from very important journals like these ones. And forget about the other journals, which could be just a predatory journal. You have to be very cautious in picking up your articles. Now, this is another where they have got a single and double and a triple deposit, where the local anesthetic and the contrast, it goes all around the nerves. So these are all clinical cases. They are not just the experimental cases. So what they did was they took the patient to the MRI unit, and then they brought the patient back to the OT and got them operated. So they do have time to do this. And this is again the coronal image, where you can see the extent of local anesthetic. That's the catheter. This is the catheter, and you can see the extent of local anesthetic spread in the triple deposit. So that is how they mentioned that this gives you a high block efficacy than the other 2 methods. Now, coming to our studies here, then what I did was, like, this is the contrast which I injected in the axillary. You can see the cephalite spread. This is the third and the second and the first one. And in another case, what I found was the block was very dense. These are catheter techniques, and you could see this is the contrast which is going on the first strip, and it's probably blocking all the components of even the supraclavicular brachial elements. So the contrast which is injected here with the catheter technique, the catheter might be somewhere at this point, and then it propels the drug still more cephalite and probably blocks even the brachial elements in the supraclavicular area. This might be because of the force at which the local anesthetic is injected, And it also may be because of the septa which are broken with the local anesthetic injections. So when we dissected, you can see that what we did was, this is at the level of the axilla. You can see the sheath. The gray one is the sheath which we have pulled up from the nerve here. This is basically the artery, not the nerve. And then we have a sheath here, and this is a nerve here. So these are the sheath, and these are probably the filamentous septae. The small ones are the filamentous septae, which can be easily broken. They are very small, thin connective tissues with some fat which is filled in, and which entirely covers the whole of the brachial plexus. So there are two septa, one which goes entirely over the brachial plexus, and then they send communications in between the two compartments. So these ones which may or may not get broken up are the ones which lead to either adequate or inadequate block. Now, when I remove everything, and then you can see these are the bare nerves. These are the bare nerves, and then you will see this is the cutaneous nerve, that is the ulnar nerve, and then we have the musculocutaneous nerve, the lateral root of median, the medial root of median coming from below, and this is the median nerve here, and that's the axillary artery. Now here you can see two sheaths. One is this sheath, and the second is this sheath, and they are very small, thin filamentous septae, and these are the ones which might get broken up with the local anesthetic injected with force. And this is the reason why it has been mentioned that when you inject either at the median or ulnar, then there is a spread more proximal and a complete block of all these nerves. But when you inject at the radial, which is in a separate compartment, you can still see the thin slimy layer over the radial nerve. It's not totally bare. So all these were in one sheath, while this was in other sheath. And this is the one which goes right into at the level of infraclavicular and still more proximal. Many times when we give infraclavicular, I saw a spread more subcaudate as well as a spread more cephalad. So this is probably the reason why the blocks are inadequate when you just give at the level of the radial nerve. This is now a cross section. What you see is this is the caudate side. That's the cephalad side. It's the pyramid shaped. It's a humerus. You can see that this is the axillary artery. It closes like a book. So, and it opens like a book. So this is the mid part of the book, you can say. This is the ulnar. These are the median nerves. This is the radial nerve. And that is the musculocutaneous nerve, which is going into the coracobrachialis. So probably you see that they're all at different places. This is the fat-filled tissue here. There is no definite fascia, but there is a sheath definitely which engulfs the ulnar nerve, the median nerve. The radial nerve is totally separate, and the musculocutaneous nerve is still more on the other side. If you take a cross section and you view it directly in front of you, so you have the axillary arteries here, and this is the ulnar nerve, that's the radial nerve, the median nerve, and that's the musculocutaneous nerve. So this can be blocked separately: the median, the musculocutaneous nerve, the ulnar, and the radial nerve. This I think Surjit has showed. This is what also I used to practice with the catheter going into the median nerve, but I used to use two catheters at that point of time because I know that the radial nerve is in a separate compartment. So I have a catheter in the median compartment and then a catheter in the radial nerve compartment. And then I used to inject local anesthetic in both the compartments. So you have got two catheters, which are almost maybe around 5 to 6 centimeters inside. And then we used to keep these catheters for almost 5 days. We were not much aware at that point of time about the, because this is a potential infectious area. So we do not use any more axillary catheters. So at that point of time, we used to use these catheters for almost 5 days. And in chronic pain, even 15 days with antibiotics and infusion pumps. So contrast studies, when you inject contrast in those catheters, these are the axillary vessels, and you can see that the median and the radial nerve, they're exactly in the separate compartments. This is an axial view, and this is the contrast which is coming over here, but it is not spilling into this. So these are the separate compartments totally. and the ulnar nerve will be included in this compartment, and the radial nerve alone will be in this compartment. And if you take a coronal view, you will find that this is the distal spread, and this is the proximal spread of the median nerve. You can see it's going right up to the retroclavicular area. And this is the radial nerve again. It's going again right up to the retroclavicular area. So probably if you are inserting your catheter somewhere at this point here, and the tip of the catheter is somewhere at this point, you inject your local anesthetic and you force it along this peri-neural space. It goes right up to the retroclavicular area. So I think the axillary is somewhere at this point. The axillary fossa block or the supraaxillary block is somewhere at this point. So I think Surjit, Tuhin and Shekhar had published this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually,
Yes,
both
sir. Tuhin and
from Ganga Hospital. So both of them, both of us were working on
Ganga
this.
Hospital.
Yeah, but then he was the first to publish this, so we lost the chance of publishing this, but that's fine, that's not a problem. Now the intercostobrachial nerve, as mentioned by Dr. Madhuri, is in this area, and it never comes in the area of the brachial plexus. You see that the brachial plexus is very nicely covered by this sheath, entire sheath, and there's one more which is going around this sheath. I had a video of this where you can see the sheath which covers the brachial plexus. And the intercostobrachial nerve, it lies superficial, and she mentioned how it should be blocked. Surjit, how do you block this intercostobrachial nerve in that case?
Sir, most of the time in supraaxillary nerve process, it is blocked. I have
Your connection is not good. Anyway, this is one patient where we had encountered, and this patient had almost a vertical clavicle. Can you see this? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so this is absolutely a vertical clavicle. So Madhuri, in this case, how would you place the probe, and what block you would prefer in this case? The other problem was she was not able to abduct this, as you do this in patients with infraclavicular or axillary blocks. She was not able to abduct this because of frozen shoulder, and she had a vertical clavicle. So any answers to this? Anybody of you can mention this. Surjit, if you all have good connection, you can mention. You can also take part in this.
Sir, what was the question, sir? I just missed it.
No, the question is the patient had a vertical clavicle.
Okay, sir.
So anatomical landmarks are out of question in this case.
Exactly, sir.
The probe placement is also difficult because this is a hollow supraclavicular fossa, infraclavicular fossa. So in that case, and the patient is unable to abduct the arm because of a frozen shoulder. So what block you would give? Of course, Surjit, since you are doing the axillary fossa block, probably you would do that. In this
Yes, sir. I'll go for it.
Can pericoracoid be tried?
Pericoracoid I have not tried because the coracoid process, it was palpable, but 2 centimeters medial and 2 centimeters inferior. I think it would be very close to the lung because she was emphysematous.
Okay.
So I thought it would be inappropriate to go for this block.
The
What surgery, sir?
costoclavicular,
What surgery?
Surgery is distal and radius.
costoclavicular.
Yeah, costoclavicular, again, you have to need to place the block. How is the probe placement, Abhishek? It would be a bit difficult in this case because it has to be parallel to the clavicle. So parallel to the clavicle means it's not going to serve the purpose.
Yes.
So, yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Mithra Sandeep. I have tried this in some of the cases where the arms were not getting abducted. We had put the probe directly into this type of arm only, where it is not abducted, it is straight, and we put the linear probe into that and give a vertical axillary block.
Yeah.
It was difficult to visualize the artery initially,
Yes.
Some manipulation, we could identify the artery and we could give that block.
So I think, Sandeep, something like this.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So this is what exactly we did in this case. Surjit, this is a sort of supra axillary, what we mentioned. We mentioned as axillary fossa, but we give it with ultrasound.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So this is what we did, and yeah.
So can we give an interscalene first and then abduct the arm much better, and then give an axillary?
That could have been done, Shailesh, interscalene to, decrease the pain of the frozen shoulder and then abduct. Yes, possibly it could have been done if you really want to give an axillary block when you totally want to abduct. But since we could do this, and I think Sandeep also mentioned this without even seeing that slide. So I think we would definitely, yes. I agree with you, Shailesh, to some extent, yes. Okay. Yeah. So as this is just something we did in the supraaxillary, which we have been doing for a long time now, axillary fossa block. We don't do it nowadays, much of those, because we practice most of the costoclavicular blocks, because most of us in Sancheti, they are now giving costoclavicular. So this is exactly what we see at the level of the supraaxillary. So you can see these nerves which are coming, and they are forming a plexus here. Isn't it, Surjit? This is exactly where you're giving the axillary fossa block.
Yeah, exactly, sir. That is the point.
Your needle is going to come like this into the
exactly.
So I give out of plane. So my needle point is here, and it goes on this side, and it goes on this side. So just 2 injections, and that would be sufficient enough for the block. And you can also see the spread of the local anesthetic in this. You can see the spread of the local anesthetic. That's the median, that's the ulnar, the radial will be somewhere here. And I think musculocutaneous nerve was also blocked in this case. So you can see the radial here, the ulnar and the median nerve as well. So this is a good block. I agree with Surjit, and I think you should publish this. You don't keep just the data like that. I think you need to publish that, Surjit. This is the MRI.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm gathering all information.
Yeah, please. This is the MRI of axillary fossa. This is at this point where the nerves are all very much close to each other. But remember, it's all vascular structures also which are in this particular point. So you need to be very careful when you are injecting your local anesthetic at this point. This hypoechoic shadow in between these two cords is the axillary artery. And this is the radial and the median nerve probably. So these are the ones. This is at the level of coracoid process. So when you are injecting very high up here, what happens is we saw that the contrast, it spreads right up to the infraclavicular area, somewhere at this point. In the coronal view, you can see that in the sagittal view as well, it is going right up to the coracoid process. Just below that, it extends distally as well. And this is again the axial view. So again, the coracoid process just lateral to that, medial to that, sorry, and in the infraclavicular fossa. So it is as good as an infraclavicular block. That is what is my feeling. So this is all what I have in the axillary brachial plexus. If you have got any questions, you can please carry on.
Sir, what I suggest that we should actually explore this area. Hello, sir.
I could not
yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. What I want to submit is that because we should explore this area, because many people.
I think Surjit, you don't have a good connection. I'm not able to hear you. Madhuri, you mentioned volume of local anesthetic in the axillary brachial plexus.
Yes, sir.
It has a high potential. Even if it's a single injection, we can do the surgery from mid humerus to the forearm. So we should explore this area and Okay, sir. Yes.
Sarjeet, I will talk to you about this personally.
Okay, sir. Definitely, sir. We'll talk on.
Yeah, some net issues. I'll talk to you personally because I need you to publish this. Madhuri, you mentioned about
Yeah, definitely, sir. We'll publish.
the amount of local anesthetic per nerve. So how much you have gone down since the last we started this block? Axillary brachial plexus. So what is your experience about the initial brachial plexus that you have been giving and now that we have been giving?
Sir, earlier we used to give up to 25 ml to 30 ml for the axillary block when I started first giving axillary blocks 3 years ago. But now we don't give more than 5 ml for the radial, medial, and the ulnar, and 3 ml for the musculocutaneous. So nothing more than 18 ml.
Yeah. So you have considerably reduced this volume by almost half of what you have been giving earlier. So what was this because of? Was it literature driven or update? How was it like?
Sir, more than literature driven, what we see, the spread of the drug we can see is because of the ultrasound. When we can see the nerve being surrounded by the drug, then we can stop there. I think we shouldn't give more than that. And then when you get adequate duration of action for surgical procedures, 2 hours, that should be enough.
Okay. So your endpoint is encircling the nerve. That is your endpoint.
Yes, sir.
But then that we also did with 1 ml.
Yeah, that we also did with 1 ml.
So then would it be sufficient enough to?
That then would reduce the duration action of the
short surgical procedures, like for example K-wires.
K-wires, we can do it for K-wires, yeah.
Ganesh, Nitin, Himanshu, Avinash, Dr. Bharti, do you have any?
Sandeep, can I comment? Can you hear me? See, I work with a hand surgeon, Dr. Sudhir Warrior. I don't know whether you have heard of him. So basically, what I have found is when the surgery is on the metacarpals or on the phalanges and prolonged surgery, then I have to give more volume, because otherwise the phalanges, they keep on moving, the finger movements keep on. So otherwise, once you inject more volume, I think, and it takes a little longer time also if you inject the less volume. That's why if the surgery is on the metacarpals or on the phalanges, then I inject more volume. But for lower end radius and all, less volume is sufficient.
So do you do it?
Otherwise, they keep on moving. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you do it by ultrasound?
Yeah, ultrasound.
Okay.
With ultrasound,
how much
if
volume?
I inject less volume, the finger movement.
Yeah, that we heard.
I use about 25 to 30. If the surgery is on the fingers or on the metacarpal, then I inject about 30 ml.
Okay.
If it is just lower end radius, then even 15 ml is more than enough total.
Okay.
Including musculocutaneous.
So that is because it starts regressing from. That is because it starts regressing from the periphery.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Himanshu, you want to comment on this? Abhishek?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? Sandeep? Dr. Mamta?
Thank you. They made all ideas so clear. No question left, sir. Thank you so much to you also, sir. You had great presentation today.
So can we wind up?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Good show, Surjit and Madhuri.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was indeed great, enlightening and lively discussion. I thank all our panelists and speakers for wonderful knowledge giving ideas and enlightening us. Thank you very much, every one of you. With permission of all members of the house, I conclude this session. My heartfelt thanks to all our speakers, Dr. Surjit Giri and Dr. Madhuri Dadke, for their hard work for outstanding presentations. I thank all panelists, Dr. Diwan sir for his great presentation and discussion and making ideas more clear. I thank Dr. Bharti Madam, Dr. Ganesh Bhong and Dr. Abhishek Lonikar for lively discussion and enlightening us more. I thank our medical director, Dr. Parag Sancheti, for his constant support and encouragement for the success of the webinar. I thank Dr. Diwan sir, Bharti Madam, who are mastermind behind this great webinar. And I thank all my colleagues for their great help and support for making it successful. My heartfelt thanks with gratitude to Dr. Ashok Sham sir and Rahul Chaube sir for their extraordinary technical support and great help for making it successful. And my thanks to all my audience and viewers for patient listening. We shall be declaring our next webinar soon. Have a nice weekend. Take care. Stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.